I was so focused and disciplined. That can get in the way. I think I could have celebrated some victories a little bit better. You probably remember these 5 things, but there are 5 things, whether you're remote, hybrid, in person, or whatever it is, as a leader that you gotta create. That's an artifact that is within your organization that is something is broken. Those are red flags. Those are things that either tell you your culture's in a good place. If no one's showing, you got a problem.
So here with Eric Stone. Eric, welcome.
Dan, it's really good connecting. It's been a little bit, but though we do talk on the phone
Yeah,
periodically, but it's
we
nice to
stay in
be in
touch.
person.
Yeah. So I have to start with this though. When I first started Enterprise, a lot of people don't know, fresh out of college, I started with Enterprise Rent a Car. Eric was my regional vice president, and I spent a few years working underneath Eric, but a few layers in between. But you were one of the best leaders I've ever come in, contact with. One of the reasons why I've stayed in touch with you so many years later. But I want to share a funny story because, as we dive into culture a little bit later, I just think it speaks volumes for you. I remember, and there were rumors flying around about this, Eric. So I
Uh-oh.
remember um, you knew everyone's name. You knew our girlfriends, our wives, our fiancés, whether we had a kid coming, where we graduated college, any life event, you seemed to know, and you always made everyone feel like the most important person in the room. There were rumors that you used to take notes about this stuff. What's the truth?
The truth is there were certain phases throughout someone's journey with enterprise that I'd have an opportunity to learn a little bit about them, and I would always take notes. And for example, during a new hire lunch, I would slowly start to learn about families or hobbies or really whatever they were willing to share, because people aren't always willing to share right away. You got to build trust. And so those were components, or it could have been a training class where I would put a little note down about what someone said. They might have been a UConn fan or whatever it might be. But the most important thing was practicing some of that stuff. It was intentional. It was coming back from a lunch and reviewing some of the notes to really make sure that it was imprinted in my mind to learn a little bit more about individuals. So it wasn't transactional. So it is true. I would be note taking and studying, and I did all of that because I knew it mattered.
It did. I really feel, I mean, and you just mentioned intentional, which just spoke to me as well because you are so intentional in everything that you do. Uh, we were exploring something a little bit before, and you never have filler words. There's never ums, there's never ahs. I don't know how you do it. I use them all the time. But that was so impactful. Just as a 21-year-old fresh out of college or whatever, to be in this big company and, have someone who was so high up to see them a month or 2 later and you knew who I was with or, what was going on, it just made me feel so important, and I know it did to a lot of people, so it's no surprise that you were writing a book on culture several years later.
Yeah, who would have thought? I never would have thought that would happen. But yeah, it was one of those experiences along the journey that was critical.
So let's talk a little bit about enterprise because it's mind-blowing to me as someone that worked for Enterprise fresh out of school and have so many friends still today and connections with people. I know the opportunity it presents. But for some people that are watching this or, unfamiliar, they probably just think it's a rental car place, it's a placeholder. I mean, it is a tremendous career opportunity. I think your son's even working there today, right?
Yeah, well, I got really lucky. I had no idea what I wanted to do, and so I just loved business and was applying everywhere. At the time, it was a tough job market, and I happened to land on this company that I've never heard before called Enterprise. And it was just one of those things what I loved about the and it wasn't always perfect. I think we all know, not
Of
every
course.
company's perfect. But they gave you an opportunity, and I didn't have to invest a penny except for my sweat equity, except for my time, and I put in my time, and I said, "As long as they treat me right, I'm gonna stay with it for as long as I can." And so I got lucky. I just landed upon it and then dug into all of the opportunities that exist within the company and found out all of those things that made it really one of the most recognized privately held companies in North America, and now globally.
Yeah.
Because when I started, it was 1 brand, 1 country. It's now probably 100 countries, 3 brands. And yes, I passed the baton. If I didn't believe in it, I wouldn't pass it to my son, who is now a flagship branch manager with Enterprise.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I started fresh out of school. I went to school for sports medicine. And, then I was renting cars, and, I got the patented look from all my friends, like, "What are you doing? Didn't you go to college? Like, why are you washing cars on a weekend?" It was all of that fun stuff, and I had interviewed with Merck Pharmaceuticals right out of school. I wanted to get into medical sales, and they had told me that, "Hey, we love the fact that you have a medical background, but you have no sales experience."
Yeah.
And I thought, "No shit, I just
Yeah.
graduated college, like, what
Yeah.
what do you want?" And the recruiter there told me, "Why don't you go to Enterprise Rent a Car? We recruit really heavily from there." I said, "Really?" And I knew I had a buddy who was an intern there, Ross, you know him
Oh,
very
yeah.
well, and, he he wound up getting me and, like, 13 other people, uh, in there, and, you know, I fell in love with the culture, the promote from within, sometimes it was a little crazy, it was like a little frat house,
Yeah.
but it was awesome, and I was 3 years in, 23 years old, making 6 figures, right? Like, and now all of a sudden I was looking at some of my friends and like, "Oh, yeah," like, it worked. You built a career that you were there 26 years
Over 26 years. Yeah.
and then retired at 48.
48.
I
Who would
mean,
think it?
you did pretty well.
That's for well, you know what? And maybe I even bounced some questions to you, but it was from hiring some really good people. And, the questions you always gotta ask is why are people staying, not just why are people leaving? And so I'd go back to you. What kept you through all those difficult times? Because outside of your rankings, which were elite
Yeah.
to be ranked, what were some of the things that kept you within a company?
I mean, I've felt very comfortable with the people I was working for. I mean, you always painted a picture. There was, a gentleman, I mean, Vinny, obviously, who was very impactful on me, but it was the opportunity, to have that vision that, "Hey, if I work hard, if I put this sweat equity in, I have an opportunity to make millions,"
Mhm.
which was kind of like unheard of, like, I didn't see any other way that I could get there, you know? Uh, and then it was kind of a cool culture, at 22, 23, you were working with other people your age,
Yeah.
right? And it was really just a cool environment, and I learned so much about business, real life business stuff, like breaking down P&Ls and having accountability for things that I didn't even learn in college, you know? It was that real hands-on experience that prepared me for so much more. It was I don't know, I just loved it, and, like, the tangible matrices, to show you where you ranked amongst your peers, like, if you were competitive and there were so many people that played sports, like, in that culture, right? Like, we had that competitive drive, so you wanted to be number 1, and with good leadership, you just wanted to follow in that path.
Yeah, I mean, it comes much more than any great company than renting cars or whatever you do. If you work at Disney, you don't just dress up as Donald Duck. I mean, you do a whole lot of other things. And I think that what was special is it was so much more than the rental car. That was the product and it was the people.
Yeah. I remember there were 2 lessons, one from you that stuck with me many years later, that probably fell upon deaf ears at that time, but I wanna address one other one first. So, my father, I remember I fell in love with that culture about getting promoted, right? And I had an opportunity to get promoted, and it's the reason why I'm in Long Island today. I accepted a promotion outside of Connecticut where we were, and I took an area manager position out here, and I remember my father, who he's blue collar guy, like telling me, "Dan, you have it good. You work with great people. They like you. It's great leadership." And he mentioned you, he mentioned Vinny, and he said, "I don't want to tell you what to do, but I think you're making a mistake. Like, ride it out, slow it down. You got the right people that you can follow. And I was in a hurry. I wanted to get promoted. And career-wise, I think it was a very bad decision. So I think staying with leadership sometimes is a lot more significant than that promotion that's right there in front of you.
Yeah. And ambition sometimes gets in the way. Sometimes patience is key. And your strength was your ambition.
Yeah, well, fell on that sword too. But, but, as a 20, I don't know, I think I was like 22 or 23 when I was managing. You had put together, and I'll share that this other lesson I took from you, but you would put together, I think it was called a think tank at the time. When you tell me a little bit
Yeah,
about that.
so I thought it was really important that in order to go where we were all hoping to go, it couldn't just be a few people's vision. And frankly, most of the people who you're going to listen to are usually almost your peers. And I needed to find out a way to get those who are in the field, in the action, in the brick and mortar stores who are running the operations very close to the things that happen. And those are the ones who really let you understand if things can actually be executed. And I needed some eyes and ears and a voice. And I would call them in the book, I called them culture carriers.
Hmm.
And what we did is we had people nominated by their peers. So people would submit to begin the whole process of who should be on the think tank. And we would select, I think it was up to 6 or 7, that we would constantly rotate people out and constantly maybe every year or so, and we would meet every other month. And the big key was I wanted the agenda to come from them. Now, I would always have a few things that I wanted to bounce off of them, but they were very informative. They were in the know. They were very helpful for truly some of the matrices we might have designed, contests we might have had, and a good time to pause and listen to the team. You know, you mentioned before we were on air here that listen, observe, and learn, that LOL type of
Yeah.
thing.
Your
And
LOL is a different LOL.
yeah,
Yeah.
different LOL. And so that was really, when I look back, it was also a leadership development tool. It allowed me to get some face time with some really important leaders who we were trying to continue to take on more and more within the company. And I would say one of our smartest decisions we ever did was putting people like yourself and some others on the think tank to really get the pulse.
It's interesting you just said that though. So it wasn't just about the feedback loop, it was also a developmental strategy.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that we continued to contribute people through the organization. I wanted to be a place where people wanted to be part of. And so when you look in life about an applicant pool, for example, and no one's applying, you got to look at yourself in the mirror. But conversely, if you look at the applicant pool and there's a lot of people, it's because people want to maybe be part of something special. And that is kind of a little thing that goes within. But when you watch and have stories of the Dans of the world who continue to progress and promote, someone else has to take their place. And you lose vision or direction when it stops. And so when people can point to, look at Dan or Vinny or Sarah, that's the path I want. That's what we wanted.
You know, I keep saying I'm going to talk about this lesson that I learned from you, but you keep bringing something up that makes me think of something else. So you just talked about be a part of something. And, that is something I think you did so well. I don't remember what year it was, but the region 24cc won its first EAA, Exceptional
Yeah.
Achievement Award. And I remember feeling such a part of that, right? As a branch man, I mean, that was something that you and the regional manager at the time could have just celebrated. I mean, everybody in the region felt like they were a part of that. I remember getting that plaque, sent to the office, and I carried that with me. Like any office I had that. It was, part of winning that first Exceptional Achievement Award. I mean, you always made everyone feel like they were a big part of the success.
Well, it was so important that they understood not only was it doing something special, but when you do something special, people want your people. Look at any sports analogy. You get a winning franchise, and all of a sudden the offensive coordinator gets hired as a head coach somewhere. And I knew that would be a catalyst to some really important things for the region. And so, yeah, it's great to win an award, but it's even better when people are like, wow, I want someone from CC. They get it.
Yeah, and that definitely did happen. I'm gonna get to sports now in a second, but I have to share this lesson. So 22 years old, maybe 21 at the time. I'm almost positive it was at a think tank meeting, but it could have been actually a management training meeting up in Wilton. But we were sitting in the conference room, and I remember being so proud. I was speaking up on all the topics, and I was crushing it by my standards, right? And you pulled me afterwards, and you said something to the extent of, Dan, you have so much to offer. And you said, sky is the limit for where you go here, right? But you have to pick your spots better. You're talking too much.
Yeah.
And when you talk too much, people stop listening. and you have really great things to say and you want people to hear it. And I remember kind of brushing it off a little bit at that time. I wasn't mature enough to hear that advice. And fast forward 20 something years later, I feel I've gotten a lot better at it, but it's still a work in progress. But I know that those were so they were just so impactful words that, are so relevant.
Yeah, I think some of the biggest challenges, if I had to say, what do organizations need to have training on? It's having difficult conversations. Actually, I put having difficult conversations and time management, maybe throw in generational perspective because it's so important with 5 generations in the workplace to understand what motivates everybody. But the ability to have that difficult conversation, I mean, it's uncomfortable for both parties sometimes.
Yeah.
But it was so important that we are continuing to develop somebody. And sometimes you are trying to just, and it's not even maybe bad advice. It's advice that is going to get you somewhere, but you do have to make sure you can appreciate it. And sometimes we don't take the time to appreciate it. But it's a real art to try to be able to give feedback. I talk about it and I call it the velvet hammer. You've probably heard the term before, but that was that thing of this mindfully authentic, fair but firm.
Yeah.
The hammer doesn't mean you're hammering someone, but there's accountability there.
I think you had us read, I might have this screwed up, but Who Moved My Cheese?
It's a great, yeah. It's very possible because it was
That or
such an
The
impact.
1 Minute Manager. But and I don't remember which book it was that had the advice, but it talked about framing. There's a story in there. I'm gonna screw this up, but it's something about like when you're giving it constructive criticism, start with the bad and finish with the good.
Yeah,
And so there was the emperor, I think it was Who Moved My Cheese, but it was the emperor and his son. And like the story goes that uh the emperor, gave all of his people, right? He was the one that everybody loved. He gave them all like the positive stuff. Like everybody just came to him and all he did was treat everyone great and give them compliments. And the son just was the disciplinary. He had to like correct everybody. And finally the emperor got tired of it, right? And said, "You know what? I'm the one that's always nice. I want to give the feedback now." And they switched roles. And the people flipped on the emperor because they said, he just doesn't get us. He used to be nice and now he
yeah,
now he, essentially like has turned into a dick, right?
yeah.
And the son, wow, he was hard on us, but now he gets us. And so it talked about like when you frame giving someone feedback, start with the negative and always finish with a positive. And I don't know if that was something you did, but I don't know.
I tried to catch people because it's so easy to catch someone when they do it wrong. I mean, that's what we just our coach in us wants to kinda correct that. I think I tried to just recognize greatness if I saw it.
Mhm.
And so if I was doing a branch visit, I wanted to make sure, even if it was the most minor detail that I said, "Dan, I love the way you did that. I love the way you made that customer feel. I love that you asked the question." Because I knew, unfortunately, in life, there are many things that we have to point out, and so I didn't the truth is from what they say in the research is for every 5 compliments, you get 1 thing that you could
Yeah.
say that's constructive. I don't know what the formula is. I just tried to focus, and I wasn't perfect at it either, but with focusing on what I'm seeing that's great, so it allowed me to make sure that there was some corrective coaching going on.
Yeah. There's so many things that you're saying that are bringing up memories now that I'm like, I had a agenda that I wanted to kinda get to, and now I'm like, "Oh, wait." So you just talked about branch visits, right?
Yeah.
And I remember you doing a branch visit, and it was, like, such a cool thing, like, and such great leadership to get out in the field and actually see what's happening, right? And I was at, 2432 Danbury, and, I was branch manager there, and I remember you came did a visit, and I had done everything. I mean, I was there and I always kinda did this where we prepped, we had all the cars ready in the morning, everything was spotless, whatever. You got there and it was just a shit show of a Monday morning, like everyone was everywhere, like, I mean, that branch was nuts, right?
Yeah.
And, I remember you coming afterwards and you said some first off, you went out and did a pickup.
Yeah.
You got in and got your hands dirty, I remember that, and 2, you told me afterwards, you said something like, "This is unacceptable, we failed you."
Yeah.
And you took the ownership that we didn't have the staffing we needed at that place, and you were doing whatever you needed to do to change that right away. Whether it was get new hires in front of us, get me drivers in the temporary, but it was just like, this is not the way you should be running a branch, and, like, you took accountability.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah, culture is the shock absorber during tough times, and so is recognizing when you fall short. And there were some things that clearly I probably could have done better through the recruiting process, whether it was through TA or my own, creative ideas potentially. But I did think that was really important to let them know that, I might have fallen short, doesn't allow that we're gonna have poor results,
Yeah,
but, we still can make things happen. But I thought that was always important if you can recognize it, so.
right? So, sports. I know you're a huge Boston Celtics fan,
Mm.
and, for anybody watching, I mean, if he's not Brad Stevens' doppelganger, I know you're huge.
Even though I have my scruff, that's
Yeah,
usually not here.
well, yeah, that's very unusual for you. You
Yeah.
know, he's so clean cut. What's going on there?
So my son inspired me. He said, "Dad, would you do the no shave November with me?" And as you can see, it's pretty scrappy here. And I said, Why not?" So this one's for my youngest son, Carson.
Okay.
So I figure why not give it a shot, even though I don't feel great in my own skin, and I look a little older, which isn't, I guess, the worst thing. But
That's great. Well, you got that sophisticated,
that's yeah,
cutoff. You're
professorial. Right.
yeah. I knew there was something a little different. But yeah, so you're a huge Boston Celtics fan. You know, we'll get into the book in a second, but, you've been able to utilize this book, right? In some ways, I know you had did some work with the Savannah Bananas or
Oh, this yeah, it's a really cool story, actually, and this is just goes to show in life of just throwing a net out sometimes, and maybe you'll at least get some cool conversations going. So I ended up, signing a personalized book to Jesse Cole, who's the CEO of the Savannah Bananas. I love what he's doing. I love his fans first
to
mentality,
me.
doing everything in-house, really inspiring kinda leader. So I wrote a little nice personalized note, sent it, and then I just followed up. And I just reached out to his executive assistant and said, "Hey, I just want to make sure. I know he's a busy guy. I'm just a little Eric Stone, but can you see if he got the book?"
Mhm.
And next thing I know, I get, I don't know if it was a day or two later, I get a personalized video from Jesse Cole in his yellow tuxedo giving me a personalized message about the book. And he also wrote a book as well. And he knows that it is no easy task.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. So I took it upon myself to reach back out and said, I'd love to talk to someone about workplace culture. And I interacted with a few others. And so what we're trying to do is work out something where I can go down there. They're growing really fast. And I think one of the challenges that they think they could use some thought leadership on is as you grow that quickly, sometimes the standards change, meaning what used to be good as a hire is no longer good enough.
Mm.
And so I think they're trying to find a way to raise that bar. And as you know, you can't just raise the bar, you have to raise the level of training. And so that's gonna be hopefully a cool interaction, and I'll have an opportunity to do some stuff with the Savannah Bananas, and that would be fun. As you know, like I said, love sports, so it'd be a cool little
Yeah.
project.
Very cool. I know you're in some of our conversations in the past, your dream spot would have been to do something with the Boston Celtics, right?
Yeah, if the
If they're listening.
Celtics, Patriots, or Red Sox are listening, I am available. It's the only company I think I'd ever go back to is to have some piece of something special. Being such a diehard fan or a fanatic about the sports, I would love to be able to contribute some way
Yeah.
to the coaching staff, even the inside sales team, or whatever it would be within the organization would be really fun, especially what the Patriots are doing right now.
Oh, it's unbelievable, right?
Yeah,
They hired Vrabel, and I mean, they've just turned it around very
unbelievable.
quickly.
Very quickly.
So, Belichick's struggling out in North Carolina. Sad to
Yeah,
see.
another learning lesson. Certainly wasn't necessarily timeless. I think great leadership can be timeless, and, I guess that debate is out.
Yeah, for sure.
He's got some flaws.
So let's talk about your book though. So
Yeah.
you retired in 2018,
Yep.
right? And what was it, 5 years later, 2023? I think we just had the 2-year,
Just had the 2-year 2-year anniversary.
so you wrote a book, Jumpstart Your Workplace Culture, right? What inspired you to write the book? I mean, obviously I've read it, but why don't you tell people in a nutshell, what it's about and
Yeah.
what its purpose was.
I mean, what inspired me was I felt there was something to give, more importantly. I mean, it was just in my experiences of at that time, close to 30 years of being around some great people, there was something unique that made the team perform at a high level for an extended period of time. And what was it? Well, it was the workplace culture. It was that catalyst to execution. It was the behaviors in action. It's all these terms. And I felt there was something to give that could help others who are trying to lead. So I literally never thought I'd write a book. My English teacher would probably be stunned that I even attempted a book. And I created an outline and just said, hey, here's what it could look like. And then I started filling in stories. And then I started filling in interviews of other people's stories and then changed it and moved it. And next thing you know, shopped it to some publishers. Found a publisher was the right match, just like hiring someone, it was the right match. And next thing you know, we put out a book, and so it was just something I felt I had to give. With enterprise, I might be able to impact a couple hundred people, but with a book, I might be able to impact a couple thousand, 10,000, 100,000 people, and that was really important. The overall premise is just how do you take an initiative? If you look at it in its simplest terms, and let it be put within the fabric of your entire organization, from the management trainee of Dan to the regional manager of whomever. How does everyone have a deep understanding of what's going on? How do you do that? What's the framework to do that? How can you lead with empathy and accountability? How can you lead with high character and a high standard? I felt there were too many theoretical, high level books, and this was more of a practitioner's journey. And then I used a metaphor throughout the book about a road trip, because building culture, it really is a bit about a journey. And next thing you know, book comes out and it's exceeded any bit of my expectations I would have had.
So it's led you to quite a few places. You talked about impacting tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. You've done what, 70 plus podcasts now?
Yeah.
You just mentioned something to me a little earlier. You've been on pretty much every continent now.
Yeah, so the pod outside of Antarctica, so if anyone's out there on a podcast for Antarctica, but it's helped me become a speaker. I use some of the concepts from the book, and I'll do a handful of speaking engagements a year that allow me to kinda continue to push out the message, and it have become, believe it or not, an international speaker after visiting Trinidad and Tobago, which was an amazing experience.
I love it. And you've always been true to yourself. I think in our conversations, as we've stayed in touch, even with this book, for me, again, I mentioned earlier how intentional you are, right? So it's like, Eric, what's the end game here,
Mhm.
right? And because it's hard for me to just imagine that Eric is doing something without a very direct intention, right? Of where you wanted to go with it. But much like your path at enterprise where, everyone gets caught up in the promotions and moves everywhere and does whatever. I always respected your journey there. You stayed in one place. Once you got to a certain level, you stayed in a place because it was right for you and your family and passed up or didn't put in for different opportunities, right? You're doing the same with the book. Like you're picking engagements that work for you.
Yeah.
You're not just doing this because, hey, I need to make a couple of bucks, speaking or whatever. Like, no, this is what you want to do. And if it's a good fit, then you'll entertain it, which it's a great spot in life to be at, but it's so Eric.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, that is the plan. It is so easy to be on the treadmill and you get stuck and you're just running, but running for who? We had a conversation earlier where we're almost asking like, well, wait, what's the goal of that? Whose
Mhm.
goal is that? Is it
Yeah.
your goal or is it someone else's goal? And for me, it is trying to stay true to who you are, which is really hard. And we all make mistakes, and I've made more than I would want to admit of some of the mistakes. But it is absolutely staying true to where I wanna be and who I wanna be associated with. Hence, the Celtics, Patriots, and Red Sox, another plug there, but that I just believe in, and I think if you do really good things for an extended period of time, people find you.
Yeah. So you're 55 now. So you just said about mistakes. What would the 55-year-old Eric tell the 35-year-old Eric looking back?
God, so many different things. If I had to pick one, honestly, I think in my earlier career, I was so focused and disciplined, that can get in the way, and I think I could have celebrated some victories a little bit better. So early on, it was just go, 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 and I eventually learned that I need to celebrate some of those personal victories, just like writing a book. At the end of the day, it's like, well, do I do another book or how about I celebrate the fact that I wrote a book? I would say celebrate your victories a little bit more, and I think I probably could have been much earlier, probably in my 20s for sure, even more flexible with other viewpoints in leadership, meaning those above me. It might have been someone in St. Louis, for example, who
Okay.
might have their opinion, and learning what I probably did from the think tank. As we evolve, we then create things that allow us to learn through people, and I probably would tweak that a little bit, but I think I should have celebrated a few more victories along the way.
Okay. Now, we talked about a little bit of this earlier, big business versus small business. So I'm obviously I work, my primary, company that I work for, I guess, I don't know, I'm a 1099, confusing, but they're a big brand, right? But, I would consider myself obviously a very small business, right? Few employees, that kind of thing, and a lot of my clients are small businesses, a lot of my peers, all small businesses. What is culture to a small business versus culture to a big company? Like, where is it I'm gonna give you a lot here. Where is it more easily, impacted?
Yeah.
And is culture just this soft phenomenon, like, or does it really mean anything?
Yeah. I would say what I loved as I learned because when I was a branch manager or assistant manager with enterprise, I did treat it like it was my small business. Though I had a whole bunch of support throughout, I was in these four walls and had to figure out how to get me and my team to work. We certainly had a lot of support advertising or name recognition. It was really easy for me to take something and communicate it to the 4, 5, 7 people I was working with.
Okay.
And so I think from an ability to pivot for me, I was able to turn things much quicker. I could turn on a dime. As I went into a very big business and graduated to leading more and more people, I had to understand to, in a sense, try to find ways to manage through, which took a lot more time. And so if you're in a big corporation, especially if you're leading a whole bunch of people and you don't have much face time, it is really crucial, A, to stay connected, but it is really hard to turn that battleship. And you can't get frustrated with the fact that it might take months in order to take some new initiative and get it through within your organization. I think each has a pro and a con at times.
Yeah.
I do miss the days where it was just a team of 4 or 5 and, you can really impact immediate.
Okay. So for any leaders that are out there, I think it's common that they lose that spark, right? How do they reignite it? What advice?
That's a great question because I always tried to balance in leadership, trying to create sparks for others until I realized like I'm just not always going to be there, and I'm not always going to be in the room because a lot of it is going to be up to the individual, and I'd actually have to challenge that individual that they do have to understand what's in it for them and what are their goals, and understanding that anything that you've accomplished was usually pretty hard. Now, I'll give you an example, especially with maybe a Gen Z employee who might be rumored to not have that work ethic, which is I don't know the right answer if they are or aren't. I'll leave that up for the audience. But if you were to ever ask that person, "What does work-life balance mean to you?" Or, "Tell me about a time where you achieved something worth achieving," they're probably gonna go through some really tough times that they overcame. And I think that's the important thing is when you need the spark, you have to understand that sometimes it's just gonna be a real difficult path. And so understanding that it's not always going to be glorious is, I think, a huge, huge importance. Understanding what does truly motivate you and where you wanna go, and then let leadership kind of inspire you, because that's what leadership is, it's influence.
Yeah.
But I always would sometimes tell directly to managers, I can't be the one who's gonna make you wanna get up every day. At some point, it's gotta be you.
Yeah.
And I can try to inspire, but at some point, you've gotta figure out what's most important to you and how great do you wanna be? And is this the place that you can get greatness? Because 'Cause we're gonna give you the tools. You've gotta choose to use them. And, those conversations would really almost put it back on, well, it's up to you. I'll be there for you, but please recognize that greatness comes from some of those struggles.
Okay. So I have so many questions. So as we talk about leadership, right? I think a lot of people, this is one we're gonna have to edit, stumbling a little bit. Um, so one thing I want to ask is, as it relates to leaders, a lot of the workforce has gone remote. Okay. Um, and a lot of people in my business are starting to hire remote. Okay. It's tough to find people. Some people have a desire to work remote. How do you continue to lead in that environment?
I would stick to so first disclaimer, 11 nieces and nephews, 3 kids, and they each have their circles of 5, the groups that they hang out with. And Uncle Eric or dad or whomever I might be around, that is that younger generation that seemingly is more exposed to that remote side. I would stick on and you probably remember these 5 things, but there are 5 things, whether you're remote, hybrid, in person, or whatever it is, as a leader that you gotta create. Number 1 is you better have a strong relationship with your team or your manager, whoever that is. What are those seeds of trust that you're gonna build? Now, when you're remote, of course, you've gotta come up with some initiatives that allow you to build that relationship. Maybe it's a video that I'm not gonna see you, but I welcome you to the team, and it's a personal message from me. Maybe it's my office hours are at 12 o'clock on Fridays, sign up for this virtual webinar or just sign into Zoom or Teams or whatever it is. The second is you better clearly communicate your goals and expectations, especially if you're remote or hybrid. People won't have someone over at the water cooler, necessarily. And so they need to know where they stand. And there better be times that you're going over where that individual stands in a typical month, typical quarter, typical year. Right material, equipment, and information in order to achieve the desired outcome. Does the person who's remote feel that they have access to somebody or something that is going to continue to help me be really good at what I do? What are those initiatives, remote, in person, or hybrid? How do I get to know Dan personally and professionally? What is my setting? And that might be at the end of our meeting, that it might be virtual because, again, we're not with each other. As we bring a financial planner in who's going to talk about some things that you might want to focus on to be great at home with your finances. I mean, whatever that balance might be. Again, those initiatives that might go under it, and then how you're going to recognize top performance. And so, wherever you are, how are you going to recognize someone who you might not see too often? What is that award that you've come up with? So, those are just some things that I would live those big, important key engagement factors and try to build in your business model.
So you mentioned 5 things there, but in your book, you had, I believe it was called the 6-point inspection.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the 6-point inspection. What is it?
So one of the things I was doing when I was writing the book is doing a lot of interviews, and I would ask CEOs of companies to say, "How do you measure culture where you guys are?" And it was crickets. They really would just give me buzzwords, and they couldn't get to a number. And so I started to think and reflect what great companies do. And since this is a road trip about a car ride and 6-point inspection would be something you'd do for your car, is I wanted to get these 6 important things that would help you check the health of your organization.
So
The dashboard.
this would apply whether you're a big business, a small business, like, you
One
understand the culture, check the pulse, you're gonna do this 6
There are some simple things you could do. So the double weighted, the top 2 categories were always engagement and satisfaction or net promoter score. So whatever you do within your organization to rank this service piece and to rank your engagement piece. Because fundamentally, when you have really, really good people and you hire really, really good people, they tend to give really, really good service. And those 2 are top for what follows underneath. As they always say, take care of your people and good things are going to follow. So those were the top, they were 50% of the overall score, and they were the 2 of the 6. But the others were also quantitative. They were retention numbers. That's a lagger. So you could have great engagement and retention doesn't always reflect. In other words, I could still stay with company A, but I hate it. And so, but you still wanted to be mindful, are people staying within your organization? So the others were about 12% of the score. And remember, the others were 50% of it. So 25, 25, and the remaining 4, about 12. Retention would be one of those 12. Market share or profit, depending on what your company was about. Are you a new established or new company? Or are you a well-established company? Those are different things that you might be focusing on.
Okay.
And then really the stuff about values and ethics. Like, what are the things, do they know the things that their company stands for. And so there were a couple metrics points, and then really I'd throw in inclusivity was the last. Inclusivity is diversity. There's the big buzz talk about diversity, but if you include everyone, you tend to mirror the communities that you serve. And so inclusivity has to be looked at. Sometimes it's an employee opinion survey, sometimes it's a very specific survey, but there's ways that you can gather feedback and contribute. Long way of saying your 6-point inspection includes a lot.
That is a lot. Uh, it's just culture, it's just such a massive thing, and I know you define it as culture is when behavior meets action, right?
Behaviors in action. Yeah.
Behaviors and action, right? So I guess it's just such a topic though, because nobody can really put their finger on it, right? Um, I don't know. It's just such an interesting thing to me. It's one of the reasons why I love talking about it, right? So again, we were kind of going in and kind of debating before, like big business, small business.
Yeah.
You kind of changed my mind a little bit, right? Because I was like, oh, you have so many more resources as the big business, and you're like, but yeah, but you can walk into your office today, Dan, and
Yeah.
see exactly how everyone's feeling and pivot on a dime.
Yeah.
And
Well, and I wanna say there are other things. I know it seems nebulous, this mystical thing that is the buzzword. But when you go into your office, and I always share this story, if you see the championship belt out, if you see the sales championship and it's loud and proud and they're talking about it and they're holding it and it's around their belt and they're talking
or it's
smack,
collecting dust.
or it's collecting dust in the closet. That's a cultural component. That's an artifact
Yeah.
that is within your organization that is something is broken. I do the basic stuff. I really harped on holiday party attendance, summer picnic attendance, a happy hour. Those are red flags. Those are things that either tell you your culture is in a good place. If no one's showing, you got a problem. And so those are little ethical violations. All of a sudden, if where I was running an operation, I get these ethical violations, I have to look at myself and say, why is this going on? Is it because I'm promoting what I permit? And if I'm not doing things about it, that's a problem. When you see silos, when you see department heads not communicating back and forth, these are cultural components that while there's no score, intuitively, and being someone who hopefully is involved in the overall operations and mechanics of your business, whether it's a warehouse, manufacturing, you're walking the floor, you've got to stay in tune to this stuff.
Mm.
There's no score there, but you can learn a lot.
You can feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think you do very well, and you've talked about a lot here, is you ask questions, right? So if you genuinely want to know the answers, just ask, right? So what's important to you? You were talking about, what does work-life balance mean to you? Because
Yeah.
you can't really assume, right? Um, how is that something you touch upon in the book, or is that just something that's come natural to you?
It is something I touch about in the book that goes through primarily the interview process.
Okay.
Because I can't, there is an art and science to interviewing. I can't just do this vanilla thing. I want your typical versus optimal response is how I always would say it. And so I think when asking thoughtful questions, you're talking and I get to learn a whole lot about you. So interviewing was a real big important thing where they're telling me what they really want, what work-life balance might mean to them. The other big thing is when you're coaching somebody, before you just go after somebody, no one wants to be attacked. But if you do ask someone, Dan, hey, tell me your thought process that went by that decision with the vendor. So before I just annihilate you because I don't know what you were thinking, why don't I understand what you were thinking first? There are times where I'm glad I asked the extra question because it made perfect sense. And the best answer was, wow, yeah, you thought through that well. I agree. So questions, yeah, open up to understand.
Okay. So I guess really being open-minded enough in your questions to really want to know the answer as opposed to asking a targeted question, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I would imagine there's times for a targeted one too, but I like to understand first, yeah.
Okay. Now that kind of leads me to, and we don't have to make this directly about you, but I guess just leadership in general. So does it come down to whether or not you really give a shit? Like, like, are you able to lead by, you know, fostering these principles, right? But not really caring? Or do you have to just really care about your people? Because that's something that I feel like can't be taught. Like when you talked about like, I can't make you get up out of bed. I could try to inspire you, but you got to want it.
Yeah, people see through it. Listen, credit to a leader who can not care and somehow motivate people, but they see through it,
Mhm.
and your actions speak everything. And so it's really hard to be someone you're not, because your true character is eventually going to come out, especially in crisis time or real principled time. And we've gone through a bunch of those. And so if you could do that, wow, I don't know how you're like a magician if you could do those things. I'm sure there's people out there. I mean, you look at leaders in the political environment or organizations who run at sports teams, and man, I don't know how they perform. They find ways, probably because they are shielded by greatness under them. And
Mhm.
it's not because it's in spite of even with the misdirections that they have, the team is so strong that they find a way to get through it, but more the exception than the rule.
So authenticity really is
Authenticity, people will see right through it. Yeah.
okay. That was tough to score though, right?
Tough to score.
Yeah. So, well, first off, before we kind of wrap up, any questions, anything you want to kind of bring up?
I would only say that, I think if you're looking for a practical roadmap that can transition and help you be a great leader, give Jumpstart Your Workplace Culture a shot. If not, you don't have to worry about it. Just go on LinkedIn and look at some of the content. At the end of the day, the message was clear. Find a way to impact people,
Okay.
whether that's through a book or a conversation or a post I might have done. Maybe it brings something that might be able to help you out. So you could always go to LinkedIn and
Yeah. So LinkedIn, it's Eric Stone, right?
yeah, Eric Stone. Just search Eric Stone on LinkedIn, and I should pop up there somewhere under maybe a clear path or something like
So
that for the
ClearPath
company name.
Ventures LLC is the company. That's actually your Instagram handle, right?
ClearPath Ventures underscore. Thanks to my daughter, I'm on Instagram, and hopefully people can get inspired to it. And if anyone ever needs someone to come and do a talk, that's something I really enjoy. There's usually, like I said, about a dozen talks a year, and I really love that.
Yeah. You'd be lucky if Eric chooses you guys to come do it. The book you can get on Amazon, right?
You can get on Amazon, most bookstores near you. So lucky this was in all the Barnes and Nobles. So that one of the cool quests was every state in North America, at least one place in every state was carrying the book through Barnes and Noble. So some in like all of Connecticut, where I'm from, all of them supported it. But in Atlanta, there's Atlanta, Georgia, there's a book near you, most likely.
Okay. I do have my autographed copy.
Yeah, there you go.
So
That's right.
I was early on it. Very lucky. Um, so just want to finish. I like to always try to do a rapid fire, right? So we'll do 5 rapid fire questions, or
Yeah.
maybe I don't have these prepared, so I'm just gonna fire things out at you,
Give it
see
a
if
roll.
I could guess it. Okay. Um, Most important part to work uh your book. What's the most important point? You only have one.
If I could pick one, I'd say the philosophy of engagement.
Philosophy of engagement. Okay. Favorite sports team.
Oh, I would have to go out of the Boston sports, I would probably have to go that's a
Come
great
on.
question. Celtics.
Celtics. Okay, we heard it. Celtics. Favorite kid.
Uh, can't answer.
Oh, right. I tried to trick you there. See if I could get an answer there.
Depends on the day.
Depends on the day, right? Favorite place to travel?
We did a trip to Italy that was just amazing.
All right, we'll have to pick up on that. I'm going again
Yeah.
this summer. And I just had one other favorite place to travel and favorite book.
If I had to pick a book, it would probably be one of the first books I read, and I think it was called, First Break All the Rules. It's a Marcus Buckingham book. It was the first book I really read that allowed me to understand that you need to spend a lot of time, among many lessons, with your superstars. Don't just think they're a superstar and they'll be good on their own, but I think it was First Break All the Rules, something like that, but look under Marcus Buckingham. It was really good.
Okay. And then outside of this podcast, of course,
Yeah.
right? Of all your podcasts that you've done since the book, of all the speaking engagements that you've done, which one have you enjoyed the most?
I can't say by far. I don't know if that's fair. The one that I took my wife to was for a company called Exco, which was in Trinidad and Tobago, and we did it for this customer service experience company. And no doubt that they're great at what they did because they made us feel so special by being the keynote speaker. I couldn't believe they showed us around the island. It was amazing. And so how they treated us mattered. And plus, it was a really cool experience.
That's awesome. We are definitely, I think I'm going to ask the media company to do a tracker of how many filler words you used throughout this because it's amazing to me. I don't think you used one throughout this entire thing. It fascinates me. But thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. Obviously, I think you're brilliant, and I appreciate you coming
Yeah.
here to Long Island to speak with me. And obviously, we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, thanks for having me part of this. Really, really a great day.
Cool. Thank you.